Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Two Sons Podcast. Yes, you have heard that here, you have heard that here tonight, and you have heard that here, and you have heard it right. We are back, baby, and it is us, it is me, it is I, and it is my brother slash co-host and host slash me of Two Sons Podcast. We are back with another riveting Star Wars episode in our mini-series, in our series of Season 3 of The Bad Batch. Yes, sir. Unfortunately, this is the last season of The Bad Batch, and what a season it has been, ladies and gentlemen. Controversial final between here and my brother. Not that we didn't like it. I think I like it a little more than my brother, and I've been seeing some things online. Nevertheless, beautiful ending to the series, in my opinion, and a great episode, regardless of your opinions on it. Definitely, probably the best season of The Bad Batch, in my opinion. And definitely one of the again masterclass in Star Wars animation from Dave Filoni for sure. Once again, but before we get into the episode, folks, let's kick back, relax, and let's go over what's going on with your host and co-host of the Two Sons podcast. Since I started off, I'm gonna reel it in and throw it back across the screen to my brother and ask him what's going on, how we doing, what's up.
M&M's.
M&M's. Heck yeah.
So I'm doing pretty good. It is wonderful to be back, of course, for Two Sons podcast. I love this podcast. God, I love it so much. It's so great. It's the only podcast I listen to. Just kidding. I listen to more podcasts. Everything has been going pretty good. You know, kind of same old, same old. I'm officially done with school for the spring semester, so I'm no longer doing that. Fantastic. Very happy about that. So yeah, round of applause. Other than that, I just been working, here and there. We've made some changes to our store today, so that was a little fun. I get to go in tomorrow again and do a little bit more organizing. I like to organize. If any of you out there, I like to clean and I like to organize. So like I don't see that as work. I just kind of see that as like some self therapy. So I get to do that tomorrow. I get to go in. I get to like tend to my section and like make it look all nice and presentable and whatnot. So but other than that, work is going really well. Thankfully, knock on wood, I'm in good health, good spirits, and it is officially May. So that means that for the whole month, it is nothing but Star Wars. We will refer to May as nothing else but Star Wars month.
Baby.
At the time of this recording, on Thursday night, it is May 2nd. But when this episode comes out, it will be May the 4th. It will be Star Wars Day. So you guys will have the episode earlier. Usually we're going to release them on Mondays, but we are releasing it on Saturday for May the 4th because it is Star Wars Day, and this is a Star Wars podcast. And what better way to watch Star Wars than on Star Wars Day? I mean, unless you can tell me anything else, I really don't know when a better time is. So
absolutely not.
Really hope you guys enjoy that. Unfortunately, I'll be working, but I'll be with my boss, and we're big Star Wars nerds, so we'll probably just be listening to the movies all day. So we'll spice it up. I'm sure we'll have a good time. Hopefully my Hermano could, do some, Mystic Force, celebrations up in New York for May the 4th as well. But, other than that, doing pretty good. Really nothing to report, nothing, too fancy going on. And that's pretty much all I have to say. So now I'm going to toss it back over to you, my Hermano.
Well, thank you very much. Same old stuff with me. I was just telling my brother I went back this Monday for my second session in finishing out my sleeve. I have the start of Godzilla, so we got Godzilla right there, and we got Kong right there. He's still healing a little bit, and he's fresh. He's not finished yet, obviously you can see, but he looks absolutely badass. Shout out to Rob Rayo, my tattoo artist at Da Vinci Studios in Long Island. Definitely check him out if you haven't, or send a friend. Whatever your choice is. I'm going back on the 13th for my third session. Probably will be my final for a little while just because of money. It's an expensive process. So we're going to save up a little bit more so we can finish the sleeve properly. Otherwise, still looking for, good jobs. If you got any recommendations out there, please let me know. I've probably applied to 25 in the past 2 days. Let's see how it works out. Got an interview on Saturday or something. Got a phone call tomorrow. So working on it slowly but surely. What else? What's it called? Again, Bad Batch ended. So very excited to talk about it. Very sad about it as well, though. and just chugging along and doing the doing. But with that being said, nothing else is really going on with me or my brother, and I say, let's get into the episode, shall we? But before we start the episode, we're going to ask our one question, and our one question that I'm going to pose is MVP of the episode. Philip, who is your MVP of this episode? I have mine locked and loaded. Who is yours?
You know what? I think my MVP of the episode is your boy Echo.
Well, Philip.
Um, it was single-handedly John Wick on Mount Tantus. No one could persuade me otherwise. This man led the charge. He single-handedly infiltrated this base. I don't know. I just really enjoyed his character throughout the whole episode. I think they spent a lot of time and appreciation on him. Obviously, there was that great scene where he's kind of like rallying the other clones to help him and Omega, one last time, which I really appreciated. And he seems to have a noble cause, which I really do appreciate. And we see that even though he doesn't have a hand anymore, he can still hold his own in the fight, which is really nice to see. And then it seems like again, this is we'll get into it later in the episode, but again, we see that he survived, so he's off doing. We know that he's going to be working with Emery, going to Pantora and like helping to resettle some of these clones, but we don't know what else happens beyond that. So, but I think hands down, I think he was the star of the show, and yeah, so he was definitely my MVP for the episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to 100% agree with you. Echo was definitely the MVP of this episode. I really feel like this is where we truly got to see him be an ARC trooper again. Again, a part of me forgot how badass Echo actually is, and he really just led the clones. I mean, again, he reminded me a lot about Rex rallying these troops. He, single handedly took on probably about half those. I would say the Empire's little experiment version of the Bad Batch. He, took on half of those and, pretty much destroyed them. And overall, again, like you said, John Wick in it, pretty much infiltrated the base on his own. And overall was just amazing. It makes me sad knowing that who knows if we're going to see him again, and we really didn't get to see him much in the series, which I do understand once he found Rex again, obviously. Um, but yeah, 100% the MVP. But with that being said, let's get into our ratings because both me and my brother have different ratings. You can rate it, like you said, critic or fan wise, or combine the both. I'm going to just rate it from the standpoint that I see it. Why don't you start off?
So yeah, so I think because we're a podcast, and I mean obviously we're gonna have our biases towards our certain franchises and whatever. But I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate tonight because obviously me and my brother have two totally different opinions on this episode. So I'm gonna look at it from like a pure critical, like unobjective standpoint. Now, as a fan, I gave it at least an 8.5 out of 10 suns. Okay, it was good, but it wasn't great. There were things that I definitely would have liked to have seen or done differently. If I'm looking at it from a purely critical, like if I was sitting down and this was my job and I was I had to score this, unfortunately, this is probably a solid 7 out of 10 Suns. I mean, I'm really adding those extra points onto my bias score because I'm a fan, because I grew up with the Clone Wars. I love the prequel trilogy. I love the clones. So obviously that bias comes into question. However, if I'm looking at this from a critical standpoint and say I just never watched Star Wars before, I think this is a 7 out of 10 Suns. I think it was severely lacking for a series finale. I mean, not just a season finale, but a series finale. It left too many plot holes, too many questions unanswered, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, but I think they really just kind of went in a different direction when it came to the whole point of the show. And yeah, unfortunately, I just wasn't very, very happy with it. Like I said, as a fan, I appreciated the ending. I'm glad everybody got some sort of a happy ending. However, I just don't think that's very realistic. And I think we should have seen a little bit more. And like I said, unfortunately, they introduced a couple of subplots throughout the season and they left too many plot holes opened. And this is supposed to be the end of the Clone Wars era, the end of all the prequel content that for Star Wars. They're supposed to be moving on. They were supposed to be moving on after season 7 of the Clone Wars, and we see that they're still leaving these plot holes open for some sort of reason. And that's basically one of my main gripes. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into more specifics later on, but yeah, my score is a 7 out of 10 Suns, unfortunately.
Yeah, so folks, again, this is like where me and my brother definitely differ because I look at it in a different light, and everything. But again, not bashing him or any of you guys shouldn't bash for any sort of opinion in terms of it. Because both of those are pretty fair scores anyway. They're normal scores, and I can definitely see um, why. Like I have a lot of the same questions, a lot of the same problems and qualms and stuff, but there is some stuff that I think we might see which kind of like puts up my rating a little more in terms of hope. And another part of me like just I guess really enjoys the Bad Batch, and I'm glad that they focus more on them than like the plots. But again, I understand because as a Star Wars fan, I wanted those answers too. But my rating of the episode is honestly a 9.7. There's a reason why I didn't give it a 10 out of 10. But otherwise, it wasn't exactly what I expected. Not at all. I really did not expect them to go this way. And the start was a little slow, but there was a lot of there. I mean, again, the overall tone of this season has been amazing, and this definitely had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I'm not even kidding. My heart was racing. I couldn't even relax in my chair and everything. Um, and there was a lot that happened. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of heart, and again, we'll review the whole thing. But again, overall, I definitely enjoyed it a little more. But we'll get into why in a little bit. So my rating is a 9.7 on this episode, and again, I've been pretty much seeing both what me and my brother think. Pretty much on my TikTok feed has all been about this season, and a lot of people are disappointed. A lot of people are happy because I think we're not used to this sort of ending in Star Wars shows, unfortunately. And a lot of people are split down the middle. But otherwise, I guess let's go into a little overview of the episode, and then we'll really get into the negatives and then positives of it. I mean, since I'm talking, I guess we'll just go and I'll start with a little bit of an overview. So obviously, we saw in episode 14. This episode starts same on Tantus, and it starts with the three members of the Bad Batch, Wrecker, Crosshair, and Hunter. And this is after they fought that weird bear creature or something, and we see from off the bat that Wrecker's pretty hurt. So right then and there, I definitely thought that he was going to be like a letdown and not as helpful and stuff. And basically, we're seeing kind of similar to how we saw in one of the first episodes of the Bad Batch, where basically it's like they're on a hope and a dream right now. Crosshair says it to them: "You guys shouldn't be the one to go in there." And this is one of the best lines and one of the most heartbreaking lines. But he says, "We're not Clone Force 99 anymore. We that died with Tech." Like which was like, damn man, like why you got to hit us in the fields? But it's understandable because it just doesn't feel like the Bad Batch. It doesn't feel like Force 99. They lost their brother. And they know we're going to go guns a blazing and we're probably all going to die too anyway. Crosshair was basically saying, you stay back. I'm willing to make the sacrifice and go. Hunter's like, nah, fam. We're all going. We know the risk, but the reward outweighs the risk in, their minds. So we kind of and then we go back and forth between like three different viewpoints: Echo with Emery, Omega with the kids, and the Bad Batch as we see it, and obviously the Empire's in there. We go to Omega and the kids where they plan their escape, and we see them work together, advise a plan where they turn one of the medical droids against to be able to take out one of the scientists, one of the chief scientists, and basically escape. And me and my brother both called it, not with the Force, thank God. I was happy about that. They got that right. But they did use the Zillo Beast. That was pretty much the main importance in the first 20 minutes of this episode. Gotta say, don't remember the Zillo Beast being like that, like insane. It was terrifying. I loved it, but I do think they spent a little too long on it. I understood, yeah, we're using it to escape, but I just feel I like seeing the Zillo Beast go crazy, but I didn't want to see that much of that. That's probably my first qualm. They pretty much showed that for a while. It's cool action. It's cool seeing the Zillo Beast again. But again, I'm there for the Bad Batch specifically because this is probably the last time we're seeing them. Um, what's it called? After that happens, that's basically when we see Hunter, Crosshair, and Wrecker get into like just into the base, and that's also where we get the introduction of this. I would say Empire's Clone Force 99, where it's the assassins that they were trying to train Crosshair to be, but pretty much modified versions. There was one with double swords. There was one that looked kind of strong, similar to Wrecker. Um, there was one that had some. I honestly don't remember the weapons as much. I think there was 4 or 5 of them, but we
According
had
to
a
like
pretty
what I
intense.
understood, they were supposed to be like pretty much exact replicas of like each of the attributes and like skills of Clone Force 99. So like each of them was supposed to represent like a member of the Bad Batch.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. So pretty much we saw like their version of the Bad Batch go up against the Bad Batch, and honestly, for a while the Bad Batch got their asses handled to them, but we know why definitely. And we actually did see Crosshair lose his hand, which I was shocked. I really thought like they were going to execute him straight then and there. I'm very surprised we didn't see anything happen to Wrecker because also he was getting pummeled too. They were just overwhelmed. You saw that right off the bat, and then when we go to see Echo and Emery, once they basically go and follow in the tracks of Omega and the rest of the kids and what happened with the Zillo Beast, they're following the tracks and they end up in the prison cell area. This is where we see the little clone rebellion. They release the clones along with Nala Se and Admiral Rampart. Admiral Rampart's a little bitch. Nala, Nala Se's cool, and this is again where basically Echo reminds me a lot of Rex, and basically rallies the clones to get them to help in his cause, which was great seeing again. I'm really glad that we got to see more clones and we got to see some sort of clone rebellion, but we didn't see the clone rebellion we wanted with Rex and Cody and Wolf and what we thought a clone rebellion would be. Not saying I hated it, but that was a letdown for me for sure. But otherwise, I definitely enjoyed seeing it because it pretty much seemed like the underdogs, and it was great to see Echo, you know, murking these things up, and it was nice to see Omega again with Nala Se. We find out Nalase destroys the lab along with Admiral Rampart after he tries to basically coerce her into telling her what Project Necromancer is, and she gives his life to save the Kaminoan science, get it away from the hands of the Empire, and so on and so forth. So we see the end of those two characters. I was, sad to see Nala Se go. Not a big deal to me though, not my favorite character, but valiant of what she did. And Admiral Rampart was a little bitch, so I'm glad that he got his. And it was definitely interesting to see that they destroyed that, and knowing what happened in the sequels. How we'll touch upon that a little later. Um, when the Bad Batch basically gets their asses handed to them, we see them end up getting tortured by what's his name? Who's the guy?
His name is Hemlock.
Yeah, Hemlock. We see them basically getting tortured by Hemlock and trying to turn them into soldiers for the Empire. And this is where I really thought like only one of them is making it out. I mean, again, like the whole time I was on the edge of my seat because it seemed like Wrecker pretty much had no chance. Crosshair was already like messed up. Now he has one hand that they took away his shooting hand, and I was like, again, all the odds are against them. Hunter's getting messed up by the electrocution stuff. We see Echo and the clone troops make their way into this area, and we pretty much see the massacre of all these clone troops from these operatives. And this is where we really get Echo being John Wick, taking on 3 or 4 of these operatives pretty much on his own at one time. And we get to probably one of my favorite parts of the episode because it's had the most action. It had me on the edge of my seat, and it had my favorite character doing what he's supposed to do. We see Omega basically be able to free Wrecker, and this is Wrecker. again, looks like he can barely get up. He gets up. He starts to go ham. They release Crosshair and Hunter. They go off on their own. Wrecker stays back with Echo. This is where we see basically Wrecker and Echo take on the rest of the operatives. And again, I really thought one of them was easily going to die there because they were still getting overturned. But I feel like we saw the ruthlessness that I want to see from Wrecker. Basically, like, this is it. Like, if I don't do it and I have to do it with my bare hands, or they're dying. And they and Echo 2 messed them up. There was a point where he was literally gonna be executed, and yet they still messed up. I can't go into specifics because I don't exactly remember. But one of the best action scenes, really felt like old Clone Wars again. I love that part of it. And then we get to, because Hemlock is taking Omega prisoner basically, and like, saying, if I die, you die, because she's the key to everything with her M count. Um, I also forgot it, but we see her get the kids out with Emery, and escape, but she chooses to stay back to help her brothers out. When we get towards the end of the episode, we have Crosshair and Hunter on this bridge that's above Tantus in this other area, which I'm assuming is some sort of other secret lab, or I don't know what it was. And we have Hemlock, Scorch, and Omega. And again, we have Crosshair, one armed, you know, terrible shape. Hunter, terrible shape as well. The two of them trying to, this prisoner situation, classic standoff, and we got Scorch there as well, so you got a clone commando there. Now, a lot of people, and again myself, because we get the clone commandos hyped up because they're one of the best soldiers of the Republic, and we really didn't get to see a lot of them, even though they showed them heavily. We really didn't see too many battles with them. So, spoiler alert, we do see Hunter and Crosshair take out Scorch only by shooting him. It took a lot of shots to get him down, but again, it was a shame to see a member of Delta Squad go out. And it was also a shame not to see two versus one, like hand to hand fight. I guess I understand because realistically, Hunter and Crosshair probably would have been uh, narrowly defeated because of their state. Maybe would have probably came out on top though. But hostage situation, so I guess it made more sense. But again, a lot of people were disappointed in that, myself included. Of course, I want as much action as possible, and I don't want a clone commando to go out in a bitch way, in my opinion. Um, Again, we see Omega pretty much do something. She stabs, Hemlock, and forces, him to separate because he handcuffed her. Forces them to separate. They shoot the cuffs, and they, assassinate Hemlock. So Hemlock's dead. We see a reunion, which was beautiful, and then we see them escape the base, and we end up back on Pabu, I believe it is, where it's being rebuilt. We see the past clones, we see all the Jedi younglings, and everybody's pretty much being worked on being returned to the family or adjusting to life, and we get our quote unquote happy ending with Wrecker, Crosshair, Hunter, Omega, and Batcher. And spoiler alert as well, if you haven't guessed by now, we do get like a post credit scene, not really post credit scene, more of a post scene, where we get a time skip, not sure how many years, but it's definitely a few, where we get to see an older Omega with an older Hunter, which I loved. I was very surprised that we saw that, but it was very nice to see that obviously they're still around, that, they still grew up together, and we get a nice little moment between Hunter and Omega, and a nice callback to Hunter's senses. And Omega is going to go fight for the rebellion, on her own because they did their job, and now she needs to fight for more. They're done fighting. A little disappointed we didn't see an older Wrecker or Crosshair. Would have been nice, but I understand they had their little Joel and Ellie moment of the true father, I guess I would say, of Omega and them, and we got a happy ending, but an open-ended ending, which was something that I didn't want either. I can't say I didn't enjoy the episode though. It had a lot of heart, it had a lot of action. I definitely loved every bit of it, but I have a couple of important questions and a couple of theories. Don't know what's going on now. Maybe thinking they're going in a certain direction, but I'm pretty sure I covered everything. If you want to talk a little bit about anything that I missed, and we'll get into what you think they could have worked on, or what you really didn't like about the episode, and then we'll just continue from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was pretty solid. I mean, it was a great overview of the episode, and I mean, if you want, I mean, do you want to start with the negatives first? Should we dive into
Oh yeah,
the
I'll
negative
yeah,
Nelly
we can
side of the
definitely
episode
start with the
first?
negatives.
All right. Well, before I start, I just want to thank D. Bradley Baker for his service over these like last 2 decades. He has
Unreal.
absolutely made these clones come alive, gave them personalities, gave them traits, and allowed fans like me and you to like just pick our favorite clones and love them and become attached to them.
He gave
And
the clones
I, I,
personality and
didn't,
made
I
them
didn't
one of the
think
most
about it
lovable
like I didn't
characters.
think about it until I saw his like farewell video thanking all the fans, and then I was like, oh fuck! I was like, now you got me in my feels. Um, but no, I mean, he practically made our childhood. So I mean, he is obviously an amazing voice actor. I hope he does other stuff with Star Wars down the line. I mean, if they ever bring any of the clones back in future projects, or just if he voices new characters, I mean, he was just an absolute gem, and obviously he deserves the recognition. So I just wanted to point that out first. Um, Now let's play a little devil's advocate here, and let's get into some of the negatives about the episode, because unfortunately it wasn't perfect. I mean, regardless of our scores, we obviously both didn't give it solid 10 out of 10. So there was obviously a couple of things that were wrong. So right away, we're going to start with the most glaring issue of the episode, right, and of the season, and if you want, just the series as a whole: the plot holes. Okay, that is basically everybody's number one concern when it comes to the series finale and the Bad Batch as a whole, because the amount of plot holes that they left in this show, my God, you could basically make this show Swiss cheese, because that's how many holes were in this goddamn show. In case people are wondering, like they're like, oh no, it wasn't that bad. It's like, let's just go over a couple of them, right? Okay, we have one episode where they bring Asajj Ventress back. Okay, now before she was reintroduced into the Bad Batch and into the show, right? For those of you that don't know, obviously she was a recurring character and a pretty important character in the Clone Wars TV show. Okay? Now, towards the end of the Clone Wars, according to Star Wars lore and history, if everybody's following, there was a book that came out called The Dark Disciple, which basically covers like what she was doing towards the end of the Clone Wars. Obviously, like before Order 66 and before the rise of the Empire, blah blah blah. So we know that she basically meets up with Quinlan Voss. Just to give you a quick rundown, it seems that she kind of turns good again, and she kind of helps the Jedi try to track down Count Dooku and put an end to him. And this probably takes place before Revenge of the Sith, I'm assuming. Um, and we see a little back and forth, but regardless, according to the book, at the end of the book, Asajj Ventress is supposed to die, right? The book ends with her dead. Okay, like that's the tragic story of Asajj Ventress. Now they brought back Asajj Ventress for the show, so a lot of fans were like, huh, well, how is that possible? Because according to the Dark Disciple is supposed to take place before the events of the Bad Batch, so obviously she's supposed to be dead. Now the showrunners and the writers of the show said that they were not retconning the Dark Disciple in the book itself, but they were going to make some changes to it, to open up interpretation, to make the story work out. And it does make sense. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, obviously Asajj Ventress has a tie to Dathomir and the Dathomiri Witch, so there's nothing putting past resurrection or her being resurrected. I mean, I could totally see them putting that storyline in. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. However, they resurrect her character, right? They make her like a point like to show in the trailer, okay? And we see her for that one episode, all right? It was lovely seeing her, okay? But that was the only time we saw her, okay? So we're left basically not knowing where she went after that episode. We don't know what she's doing post Bad Batch and into the original and the sequel trilogy, if she's even alive for that long. So there's one plot hole right there. They basically introduced the character, they said sayonara, and then they never checked up on that character again, or they never included that character in the finale to kind of give us an idea of like what she was doing or why they brought her back. They basically just brought her back to be like, huh, you know who we could have cameo from the Clone Wars that people would like? Asajj Ventress, and then they just brought her back for the cameo, basically. You can't convince me otherwise that that's the only reason why they brought her back. There was probably a million other options you could have went when it came to force sensitive beings to like test Omega, and they brought her back for that reason. So you have that, right? So there's one plot hole right there. Obviously, there's a couple of different plot holes when it comes to the clones. Okay, so obviously, for a couple of episodes, we see Captain Rex, a couple of other clones from different divisions and battalions are basically kind of building this like clone resistance, right? This like clone rebellion that's like in the shadows. Okay, obviously there were a couple episodes where they focused on like a clone assassin basically taking out their base, and obviously that's when Captain Rex reconnects with Commander Wolf and everything. So you think like their whole mission the entire season, right, is to get the coordinates to Mount Tantus so they can launch an assault, they can free their brothers, and basically save the day. And Captain Rex and none of the clones are seen in the finale. I mean, his name was mentioned once where they were like, you know what we should do? We should call for backup. Why don't we go to the relay station and contact Rex? And then they never do it. So where's Captain Rex? Where's the rest of his clones? Where's Gregor? Where were they? Why weren't they in the finale? So there's a plot hole right there. I mean, obviously we know Captain Rex and Gregor, they survive, they go on to be in Rebels and whatever. But whatever happens to the other clones? Whatever happened to their resistance or rebellion? Like, why weren't they in the finale? The whole point of showing them in season 3 was because they were trying to get the coordinates for Mount Tantus to save the clones. And then you don't put them in the finale. Like, why wouldn't you do that? So there's another plot hole right there. Okay? Commander Wolf. All right, we see Commander Wolf in that one, right? He makes his cameo. He makes his appearance. Okay, we see him reconnect with Captain Rex, some of the clone survivors, the Bad Batch, whatever. Where was he? Because according to how the Bad Batch left it, right, Commander Wolf is still working for the Galactic Empire. I mean, he never rebelled. There was never any mention of Commander Wolf rebelling and taking his clones with him or nothing. As far as we're concerned, according to what the Bad Batch has given us, Commander Wolf is still working for the Galactic Empire. And again, we didn't see him. So it's like, where was he? Where did he go? Why wasn't he there? Because then that even opens up more plot holes too. Obviously, we see both, all Wolf, Gregor, and Rex connect in Star Wars Rebels. How do they connect? Where does Wolf meet up with Rex and Gregor again? So there's that. Again, another fan favorite of the show, and everybody's favorite clone, Cody. Whatever happened to Commander Cody? Right? I mean, it wasn't this season, but it was last season, where we have that episode with Commander Cody and a couple of the clones in Crosshair, fighting one of the last separatist strongholds, and he walks away at the end of the episode, and he goes AWOL. Where was he? You're just gonna leave his story open ended like that? I mean, we see Rex refer to Cody in like a PTSD flashback. Where was he? Where did he go? What did he do? We don't know the answer to that because he wasn't in the episode. So that right there, you got a couple of plot holes right there. Okay? So, and again, obviously you have a couple of characters survive. Okay. So you could probably sum up, some of the characters' stories pretty well, right? We all assume that Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair, they retire, right? They don't join the rebellion, they don't join the resistance, their fighting days are over. They retire on Pabu. That is where they're going to stay. Done and dusted, right? Okay, they don't need, that's not left up to interpretation. I totally understand. I totally agree with that. Whatever. Okay, obviously Echo survives, right? So we know that, he's going to be working with Senator Chuchi and Emery, and he's going to be relocating some of the clones to Pantora. But then what does he do after that? Where is he during the original trilogy? Is he alive during the sequel trilogy? What does he do after that? So there's a lot of questions left with that. Okay. We saw some of the clones stay on Pabu. Are there some clones on Pabu along with the Bad Batch, or whatever? And then again, I don't really see this as a negative, but because they threw in Pantora and Senator Chuchi's name, it would have been interesting just to see what they were doing, because we knew that she was such a strong supporter of the clones during season 2, and then she was kind of on hiatus besides one of the very first episodes of season 3. We never really saw her again, so it would have made sense maybe to tie up her storyline or kind of give us an idea of what she's doing or whatever. Because obviously, the Empire is going to notice that you're going to be relocating clones to your planet, especially if you are a senator for the Galactic Empire. So it would be interesting to see like what she was doing. But I don't really count that. I mean, that's not really something negative or whatever. It's just something to kind of think about. Um, so and then again, you have the biggest plot hole of them all, really, where it comes to Omega. Now we see that obviously there's a time skip. She grows up. She's probably like a young adult. By that time skip, it looks like she's definitely put on a couple of years, right? We see that she's becoming a pilot for the rebellion. Great, that's awesome. Number one, why is she becoming a pilot? I mean, besides the couple of times that Tech taught her to fly, when does she ever show interest in wanting to be a fighter pilot and flying? I mean, she's taken so many different skills and abilities from all her brothers. Why not just leave it open ended and say, I'm going to go join the rebellion? But they threw the pilot in there probably for some reason, right? Because they wouldn't just come out and say pilot. And again, she's joined the rebellion. Where was she in the original trilogy? Is she alive in the sequel trilogy? Is she a good pilot? Does she have her own squadron? So again, it's leaving these, and then again, the whole thing with her M count. I mean, they were too afraid to say midichlorians for some reason, so they just kept referring to it as M count. But the fact that she has a very high midichlorian count, they never explored that any further. So what was the point in introducing it anyway? I mean, obviously, I was very happy. That's one of the positives, that they didn't show any force abilities or force sensitivity with Omega, which I was very happy about. But you give her a high M count for Project Necromancer, right? A couple of years have passed, right? They haven't come looking for her at all. Okay? And like I don't think a lot of people have realized that there's a time skip, right? She is a young adult. They are not looking for her. The Empire knew where Pabu was. So at any point they could have came back after her. But they decided to scrap Project Necromancer.
Yes.
Hold on. They decided to scrap Project Necromancer, and they never come after her again. Okay? But again, like, you just leave the M count kind of up in the air. Like, is she ever going to train to maybe see if she has any force sensitivity or powers and whatever? Is she going to use that ability to become a great pilot, to become a great shot? So again, a lot of, and then Project Necromancer, right? The whole point of Project Necromancer was a cloning experiment for Emperor Palpatine, for Darth Sidious, right? Because obviously we know he returns in the sequel trilogy, right? It is a clone of him that is orchestrating things behind the scenes. So we see him again in the sequel. We see that somehow Project Necromancer is successful. But if you listen closely, when Governor Tarkin and the rest of the Imperial forces are going over and looking through Mount Tantus, all of the evidence and all the information for Project Necromancer is destroyed. They never say, oh, don't worry about it. We have backups. We made copies of the information. Nothing. It was almost like the project up and vanished. It was destroyed. They had no evidence. So he's like, oh, just go put the extra funds into Project Stardust. Go put it into the Death Star. So it's like, if you just destroyed Project Necromancer, how is he successful in cloning himself? I mean, are we supposed to believe just off camera that they have this information on the side and that it wasn't all for nothing? Because it doesn't seem that way. It seems like all their research was lost, and Governor Tarkin was just like, oh, well, I guess we'll put the funds into the Death Star now. So it's like, where was that storyline going? Because you just destroyed it. So, I mean, again, I'm sure I'll think of more after I give you a chance to talk, but, again, there was just a couple of things like that. And then again, the final point that I had really when it came to the negative is the direction that the show went in. So, I mean, I'm sure we're going to do an episode in the future just about the Bad Batch as a whole, right? Because after all the seasons came out, whatever. If I had to rank the seasons, I'm putting season 1 first, I'm putting season 3 second, and I'm putting season 2 third, okay? This show is called the Bad Batch, right? It's supposed to be about Clone Force 99, okay? We see in season 1 that obviously they meet somebody called Omega, right? We see that, they escape Kamino, right? Like, she joins the squad, like, and basically she just kind of tags along on all of their adventures. She's kind of like this quirky side character that people are starting to love, okay? Now we know that the Galactic Empire and some official people are after her, but not for any reason specifically. They're just after the Bad Batch and they're just after Omega because they're loose ends and they just want to tie them up. Okay. So again, the whole story is called the Bad Batch. Okay. So season 2, we still don't really have a story for Omega. It's still kind of very heavily focused on the Bad Batch. Obviously we have the death of Tech, which R.I.P. that beautiful man. And then we see that there is a underlying story, with the clone troopers and everything. But again, not really too much about Omega. Again, it's been a while since I watched season 2. Maybe they started dropping some stories about her, but nothing really too important, right? Where she was center stage. Now we get to season 3, okay? And all of a sudden, Project Necromancer, okay? And all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Omega's really important. And it took us 3 seasons to figure out why she was so important. And the reason why she's so important is because of her end count. And it's like, why can't you just say midichlorians? What is so hard about saying midichlorians? I mean, it's like you're basically saying, call me a Jedi without calling me a Jedi. And that's the only... And then all of a sudden, because she's so important, basically the whole entire season is about her, right? She's extremely important to this project, to this experiment. She is the missing link, okay? And that's all fine and dandy, right? But it seems like as the episodes go on, the Bad Batch themselves lose more of their importance, and it's the Omega Show. They might as well just called it the Omega Show instead of the Bad Batch, because in my opinion, the very last episode, the finale, you go back and you watch that, and just take out Hunter, Crosshair, and Wrecker, and please tell me how the same events do not happen, and she gets away scot-free, the clones are rescued, she saves the children. Please tell me how that doesn't happen without the Bad Batch there. If anything, the Bad Batch sideline her, she has to go and save them, and it all works out in the end. But it's like, you're telling me if they weren't there, she wouldn't have done the same exact thing that she did? She basically escaped all by herself. She basically set the Zillo Beast free. Her and the kids were able to successfully do that. They met up with Echo and Emery. They went to the shuttle. Boom. They went to the shuttle. The kids were on the shuttle. Echo and Omega still could have went into the prisoner quarters. They could have captured the clones, got all the clones, and then they could have went. And everything would have worked out fine. But because they added the Bad Batch and everything, now all of a sudden the Bad Batch are attacked by their Empire body doubles, basically. And then they're captured, okay? And then she's like, oh, well, I gotta go save my brothers now. So you're basically making the Bad Batch useless, because they basically just got beat up by their body doubles, and now you have to have her go save the day. So she escapes all by herself with the Zillo Beast. She saves all the other clones, and then she saves her brothers. I mean, can this kid do no wrong? I mean, she must be Space Jesus. Because, no wonder why she's going to become a pilot for the Rebellion, because she is just one hell of a fighter. And then, besides that, I mean, it sounds like I'm ranting, and I am ranting, but again, these are just a lot of the negatives I have with it, so just please bear with me until we could get to the positives, okay? So there was that. I feel like it focused more on Omega, and it lacked a lot of stuff for the Bad Batch, and it just felt like she was never paying for any of the consequences of her actions. She constantly got away with everything. She got captured. She escaped. She got captured again. She escaped. It's like, you might as well not even put a lock on the freaking prison door, because she's just going to walk out anyway. It just seemed like everything worked out in her favor, and she became the focal point of the show, and the Bad Batch were just kind of in the side. And they're like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to lose an arm, and I'm going to become immobilized and get experimented on, but you're going to come save me. And another thing, with this experimental Imperial Clone Force 99, right, that Hemlock introduces in this season finale. Tell me why, instead of just introducing these clone assassins throughout the season, why don't you introduce this group sooner? Why can't you have them be the thorn in everybody's side for the whole entire season? That way when they meet up in the finale, it's this epic showdown of the old Bad Batch versus the new Bad Batch. You know what I mean? This group of highly specialized individuals would have been a cool adversary. Imagine them infiltrating the clone trooper base. That would have been a sick episode. So it's why give us these assassins instead of the Imperial version of Clone Force 99. That would have been some epic showdown. That would have been some stuff to build up over the season. That way, when they finally met again on Tantus, you would have been like, "Oh, shit's about to go down." Like they've been at each other's throats for like the whole entire season. That would have been really cool. It was basically like Maruk. They basically just introduced these really cool characters, and they're like, "Oh, you really want to know more about these characters? Well, we're gonna kill them off. So now you can't speculate." I've seen some really cool fan theories about that, by the way, that we'll talk about later. But again, that's something. Then Crosshair, right? Love Crosshair. He's one of my favorites. I think his development was pretty spot on for most of the season. I really like what they did with his character. But the whole handshaking thing, right? That was like his main focal point the whole entire season. The whole handshaking thing, right? He didn't know why it was happening. He was trying to stop it. They tried different methods. You know how they solved the problem? By chopping off his hand. So it's like that handshaking thing basically just ails him the whole entire season, and their solution is like, oh shit, we forgot how to wrap up this storyline. Yeah, let's just chop off his hands. And then he becomes a better shot after his hand is chopped off. So it's like, I don't know. So in a nutshell, after listening to my rant, those were obviously a couple of the negatives that I saw with the episode, and then I guess tying it into the season as well. I mean, of course, there were some positives. I enjoyed seeing the Zillo Beast again. I think it was a cool and creative way to kind of distract the guards on Mount Tantus. Make for a cool escape and made some really cool action scenes, which I really do appreciate. I really like the emphasis on Echo because obviously he was kind of like sporadic throughout the season. So I really enjoy seeing a spotlight put on him. And it was really nice, especially that scene where he's able to gather all the clone prisoners and like rally them for like one last fight. It was like that was like seeing the old ARC Trooper again. It's like we're seeing ARC Trooper Echo. So that was really nice to see. Obviously, I love Nalase. I mean, if she's the last Kaminoan, I mean, she obviously went out with a bang. I really love what she did, and the fact that she wasn't going to let her science or her research get into anybody else's hands. I really like that. And yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's pretty much my huge rant and tirade on it. I mean, I hope a couple of things I said made a lot of sense. I don't want to just sound like I'm just bashing on the episode. Um, but I just unfortunately, I mean, you saw how many negatives I listed. I mean, unfortunately, those just kind of outweighed the episode for me, which is why I just gave it such a average review, to be honest.
Yeah, so it was a lot. It was a lot for sure. I'm I'm not as much similar. There's a lot of things that I feel they had to go in a certain direction, and I'm gonna blame it on the sequels. So we know the biggest thing that was in this season was Project Necromancer, because they basically had to figure out a way to tie in the cloning in Rise of Skywalker. Why they even touched upon that, I'm not sure if they wanted to close that chapter to make it more open for the future or whatever, but they started with that this season. I can argue why they really didn't focus on Omega, since the get go. And it's kind of like we needed to get to know her character and understand her character more. And similar with the rest of the Bad Batches, we really needed to spend more time with them. I do have a problem with introducing a lot of people in this season. A part of me believes it was to get more viewers. Again, I love seeing Cad Bane and what's her name, Fennec Shan again and stuff. And those were fine introductions. Asajj Ventress, it does not necessarily make really any sense at this point, besides just wanting to bring back another character. So that's kind of the frustrating part. Um, and similar with Wolf, they just kind of brought back Wolf to be like, hey, there's Wolf, and show that he interacted with Rex. I'm pretty disappointed that we really didn't see any of him again, especially considering that he did let Omega and the rest of the Bad Batch go. I thought we would see him being disciplined or something else. So I'm not really sure why they went in that direction. And of course, my two biggest things was one, where's Cody? Because the episode with him was one of the most one of the best episodes in my opinion of this series. And you know we know that he went AWOL, and we have the only evidence we have that he might have met up with Rex is Rex's flashback in Rebels. You know, screaming Cody. Maybe he fought alongside with him again, or that could have just been from the Clone Wars. We don't know. And obviously, not seeing Rex again, it can, it did confuse me a little. I'm trying to remember back. Because again, they do talk about contacting Rex, but I feel like when they say that, they see the Bad Batch go by, and then they're trying to go. Oh, you know what it was? They were going to. I think they were going to do
Basically,
that, and then
I
they got
think basically
sidelined by something
Crosshair.
else. What I can't exactly remember. I would have to go back.
I think
So that was
basically Crosshair. I think that was when Crosshair was like telling them to like, because basically Crosshair was like, "Oh, I'll infiltrate Mount Tantus." He's like, "You and Wrecker like go to like the relay station and contact Rex." So he was basically telling them to contact them for like reinforcements while
Oh
he
yeah, yeah,
infiltrated.
yeah. So what's
And
it
then that's when
called?
Hunter was like, "That's when Hunter was like, no, we're all going to go together." And then that's how that plane got scrapped,
Yeah,
basically.
I guess maybe a part of it is it would have been. I mean, I don't think it would have been easy. It still would have been hard. But I guess they really wanted to emphasize the Bad Batch more, even though you can kind of argue they necessarily didn't. A part of me doesn't really like. Again, I'm glad that they focused on Omega more because realistically, like, yes, the Bad Batch was about the clones and Clone Force 99. But they did introduce Omega, a completely new character in. I'm pretty sure it was season 7 they introduced her, if not the start of the series. So we also had to pretty much go through her character growth too, and see. It's if I remember, I think they started hinting her importance in season 2 because when Nala Se got captured by the Empire is really when they started about Project Necromancer because I guess they figured, hey, she has the cloning techniques. We could do this to Palpatine. So I'm assuming that's when they started it. Obviously, not as heavily until probably the end of season 2, and then this whole season, pretty much. Yeah, I can argue that the Bad Batch really didn't seem as useful. If they didn't have those operatives, they probably would have definitely been more useful. I'm glad that they did go back and forth between other characters, but again, I do wish the Bad Batch was featured more. Um, I'm not really mad about like Crosshair like being able to shoot Hemlock just because I figured it's one of those live or die scenarios, and with the help of
Oh, I
Hunter.
mean, I'm not upset. I mean, it was a pretty cool scene. I mean, I like how he leaned on Hunter and they like kind of used each other for support, and
Yeah,
it was a badass scene. It was just really funny how like they made the main focal point of his character like he has some sort of like PTSD or like trauma from all the experiments that was done on him on Mount Tantus, and he has the effect of that in his hand, and they show it like every other episode that he's shaking his hand, his hand is shaking, and they're trying to figure out how to stop that. And you think they're getting somewhere, it's like trying to tell them like maybe it's like a mental thing, like trying to teach him how to like meditate, trying to like work through his like trauma, and you think they're getting somewhere with that, and then they just chop it off, and it's like what
yeah.
was the whole point? Because it's like you never tied that up. It's like you tied it up by chopping it off, like boom, chopped it off, non-existent. Just act like it never happened, and it's like you can't do that, especially if it's like if it's
I guess the
a
part of it is
staple
like,
part of a character's
well, when I think about it, he realistically wasn't using like he was losing what made him the crosshair. So I guess kind of getting rid of it is like showing that his hand doesn't really define how good and what he was genetically bred for. That's how I would probably see it, especially considering that it really doesn't matter. Considering we don't see of the Bad Batch anymore, we can assume that they just retired and lived out the rest of their lives on Pabu. Um, at the end of the
I mean, I can
episode,
see it. I can see it from that point. Like, I think that's a good point, to be honest, that you bring up. Like, the fact that, you know what, all these characters were genetically bred for, certain traits and characteristics. So, he's showing that, he doesn't need his hands to make him a good marksman. And, that doesn't define who he is. Yeah, I can see it like that. But unfortunately, just the way it came off,
yeah, of
that's
course,
not where my head went at first.
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure after a couple of days, like, I start to think about it and I start to, like, really digest it a little bit more. I'll start to see some of these points. But like at first glance, I was just like, why did they do that? I was like, that was just so stupid.
yeah. Unless it was like also another way to basically show that like the Bad Batch like was getting their asses handed to them, and they really needed like it was high stakes or something, even though we knew it was high stakes. Something that does kind of frustrate me a little bit is obviously when we first met Omega, we knew she was the fifth enhanced clone because obviously we know Echo is an enhanced clone. He just happened to join the Bad Batch. But we never really found out what her thing was. Like even Hunter had his
Well, I
thing.
mean,
Everybody
you're
had
right. We
their thing.
did. Her thing was the fact that she had a high midichlorian account, and that was rare for a clone. So
Well, I
that was her
guess it
special
just
enhancement.
to me that doesn't really seem like it. But a part of me also was thinking that she used her because she did refer to a lot, of where she learned her things and stuff like from her brothers. I mean, she did seem incredibly smart and definitely incredibly lucky. I guess that was just because maybe they just used the M count in a way to basically make her seem like, you know, I don't want to say indestructible, but again, lucky. Um, what's it called? Similar to so and so in Rogue One, the blind thinking that the blind guy that was
Yeah,
guarding the kyber crystals. Again, nobody ever knew about his M count, but he was definitely lucky and used something there with that. And again, I'm glad that they didn't use the Force. Again, it's annoying that they didn't say, metachlorian. I'm not sure why. I guess just because they don't want to come out and say it because they wanted people that didn't watch the show to guess. I have no idea. Honestly, that part definitely does not make sense. And it is frustrating. Probably the biggest thing is that we know what Project Necromancer was made for. So it's like, okay, that answers Palpatine being cloned. And then obviously everything being destroyed. Who knows about Project Necromancer? I guess besides the Emperor himself and Tarkin. And Tarkin, like he said, he hated the science department. He refunded the rest to Project Starbust, which we know as the Death Star. So it kind of comes into question again. Was like, how did they come about it again? Is that going to be answered? Was there something left? Like, is there a hint if I go back and watch it? I honestly don't know. Um, and again, with this show being called The Bad Batch, I am a little sad that we really didn't see more of them in this final because I even know like we got a good amount of them. I feel obviously they wanted to showcase Omega, but the problem is that people love the clone. I mean, she is a clone, but like this Clone Force 99 was definitely a special addition to Star Wars and probably the last lingering bit of season 7 really. Even though Omega is, but she's a newer character and everything, and all of them you can argue are newer characters. And a lot of people said that they didn't mind as much about the other characters because it's called the Bad Batch. Yes, I agree, but also I am upset that we do have those open-ended questions. My biggest thing is because again, I don't know what Star Wars, I don't know what Dave Filoni, I don't know what Disney has planned. Obviously, season 7 of the Clone Wars, their shows are doing well and they're making money for them. I'm assuming. Again, I can imagine that this. I don't know what the views on this was, but a lot of people were talking about it pretty much from season 2 and on because of the Mandalorian season 3, and they compared them a lot. So it shows Star Wars animation can still be. The thing I'm holding out for, because again, we never got an answer, and I don't think we're writing books or comics here, is people have theories and a hypothesis that we're going to see basically a show of Rex and his squadron and Echo that hopefully answers questions. I highly, highly doubt it because it would be too easy for Disney and Star Wars, but it would answer all the questions. You know, a part of me is also I'm happy that the Bad Batch got a happy ending because we don't see that a lot in Star Wars, and it's nice because of everything they went through for basically this kid. It, reminds me a lot about obviously Ellie and Joel, especially with Hunter and Omega. So I'm glad we got to see a time skip where we know, okay, we got that answer. The Bad Batch, obviously, they didn't want to fight anymore. The only member, so to speak, is Echo, that I'm assuming was with Rex majority of the time until he died. But again, like my brother said, why did she want to become a pilot? The only thing that makes me feel is because of Hera and the experience she had with her. Again, brief experience. but they could have just said, "I'm going to go join the rebellion."
I
Obviously,
saw it more as like I saw it more as like maybe her experiences with tech because I mean I think I remember
for
Tech
sure,
kind of
yeah,
teaching her how
maybe
to
both of
fly
them
here and there.
combined. I don't know.
Obviously we saw Tech's glasses on the dashboard,
That was a
so we
nice
know that
touch.
like there's some tie in. But like this is how I see it, right? And like when I say it, it might come across one way, but just trust me when I say like that's not my intention. Obviously, we see that Disney, like you said, has had some success when it comes to their TV shows, right? Whether it's animated or live action. Okay, but here's a trend that we're seeing, and I'm going to see if you could pick up on this, right? So we see Mandalorian season 3, right? Obviously, Mandalorian, we're thinking of Din Djarin and Grogu. Okay, so did obviously, and I'm gonna ask a bunch of yes and no questions. So did we see both Mando and Grogu in season 3?
Mando and Grogu, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Now, did we also see Bo-Katan in season 3?
yes.
Okay. Now, would you say that we saw them about the same amount of time?
I couldn't even
Like their
tell you.
screen time was like 50-50?
I would probably say split if I remember.
Okay.
It was a
'Cause
lot of time.
from what I remember, season 3 kind of felt like very heavy-handed. Like it was like the both of them. They were kind of like partners in crime. So so we have that. Okay. So
I know what you're getting
then
at
we
here. You
fast
don't
forward
need
to
to ask me
Ahsoka.
the question.
Yeah, basically what I'm getting at is that these more recent Star Wars projects, we're seeing them take an emphasis off of certain characters and place them onto other characters. And what I think is that unfortunately, I think that trend followed into animation, and that's why I think Omega became more the focal point, and the Bad Batch were kind of sidelined. It's the same reason why Ezra was kind of sidelined in Ahsoka, why Kanan was never brought up, why Grand Admiral Thrawn was kind of just like like he's supposed to be this like really intriguing badass character and he was kind of pushed to the side for other characters. That's why we kind of saw Mandalorian and Grogu kind of pushed aside for other characters. It's because Disney is trying to push a certain narrative, and that narrative is getting in the way of good storytelling. And that is exactly what happened in this season. Because again, the Bad Batch should not be taking a backseat to a show called The Bad Batch. I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point of the show is about them. They should not be taking a back seat to their own show. And that's what they did. Because they want to promote new characters with certain agendas, and it just makes no sense. Because then they leave plot holes and they leave open-ended stories. And when you're supposed to be tying up a story, you're creating three more.
Yeah, I mean, my hope
And it's like
is that they do explore these projects further. Like a part of me believes that they leave these open ended because it gives them more projects. Like obviously they could easily create another animated show based off of just clones again. If they do, I have no idea. We can get Omega in other Star Wars projects, which makes me excited. I would like to see that. So that's kind of how I view it. Again, it's just annoying because we don't know if it's going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, then it's kind of like, okay, now, why did you do that? Did you do it so you can maybe in the future, or did you do it
but
to make
that's the
it
thing though. Like if they're gonna do this, then they have to do it.
well, yeah, it's
Like you
just
can't
annoying
leave
that
it
we
open
don't know if
and
they're
not
doing it.
explore it.
We have
Because
we
you're not because there's going to be a time where there's no Star Wars projects on.
oh yeah, well,
So
like for
people are going to be sitting
example,
there. People are going to be sitting there and wondering, what happened to so and so? Are they ever going to do something with so and so? Are they ever going to do something? And it's like if they're going to create these stories, then they have to follow up on them. You
it,
can't just like do it and then just be like, oh well, we're going to leave this open just in case we want to do something.
well,
It's like no,
it kind of reminds
you
me
already opened up the
it kind of reminds me
yeah.
of
Go ahead.
Clone Wars. So Clone Wars ended with season 6 with that whole Yoda storyline, and then they brought it back with season 7. How many years later? And they ended it beautifully. They pretty much opened a whole new plot point to introduce the Mandalorian, basically. Then we got the Mandalorian introduction that also brought back old characters, introduced new characters. What is the Mandalorian leading towards? Dave Filoni's movie. That opened up just by bringing back season 7 of Clone Wars. Also opened up this show, opened up so many things. again, we didn't know about season 7 of the Clone Wars. Nobody ever probably thought that would be seen again. But obviously, we knew about the Bad Batch. We knew about the Mandalorian. We didn't know about Ahsoka until they showed her again. Nobody really thought about that until that. That opened up. Okay, Ahsoka's really popular again because of season 7 of the Clone Wars. We're gonna make her show. Oh shit, her show did pretty good from what I understand, and she's probably gonna be heavily in um, Dave Filoni's movie. Rebels was in the background there somewhere between Clone Wars and obviously the new season of the Clone Wars and Bad Batch and stuff, but which was not as popular as a show then, but then resurfaced once the Clone Wars came back out. We're going to reintroduce Ezra and Thrawn and all that stuff. So a part of me thinks that Star Wars does this
So
because they
basically, what
actually
you're
have a
saying
plan.
is that Dave Filoni is pulling the strings, and he is just tying everything into one big project by himself.
Yeah, like I told you, like unfortunately, I feel like even though Dave Filoni is pretty much the forerunner of every Star Wars animation show, and it seems like the future of Star Wars, Disney is still the owner of Star Wars and they have the rights to it. And obviously, Dave Filoni's got to be overseen and has stuff added to it. That's where we get a lot of these story points. I feel like he's trying to balance it, but unfortunately, sometimes he can't balance it the way he would like. Again, this show probably could have had another season depending on what they did in this season. It probably could have, but it didn't. And again, it did close part of the story, so I'm glad, but you opened a lot. That's the thing. From one season, you did open a lot. So does a part of me think that we're going to see more Star Wars animation? They they're bringing Tales of the Empire, so they can still do it. And I love Star Wars animation; they kill it every time. And I feel like that's what people want. Nobody wants the clones to leave. You want to get rid of Star Wars animation for like 2 or 3 years and bring back a clone story, and like then you could. Do I think you should announce it now? Yes, because I realistically think this will change how people feel. I'm assuming so many people, again, I don't know when they had the Bad Batch planned, but nobody expected the Bad Batch in season 7 of the Clone Wars, and you brought them in, and you created a whole new storyline with them. So obviously we know there were characters in the Bad Batch that we see in other projects. We see Fennec, we see Cad Bane, and the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. I'm pretty sure. I know you. There's that book with Asajj, comic with Asajj Ventress. But again, there was Cody's story that completely switched from whatever, excuse me, was previously written about him. So again, you opened up those questions, and everybody wants Clone Wars, and the prequels are probably the most popular timelines, I guess I would say, in terms of stuff that you could make, especially just on the clones alone. Again, if you have one more opportunity to probably do a Clone Wars thing with Rex and the rest of them, and after that you cannot touch it unless you reboot it, again in the future. I don't know, or unless other stuff gets added. But realistically, you could have closed it out with this completely, but you didn't. So part of me thinks you're leading towards something else, but that's just me holding on. Realistically, if they don't, my rating will go down from this episode. Again, I thought it was a great finale, but there are things that I didn't see. Again, I think it would have actually held more worth if part of the Bad Batch died, because honestly, it would have been better. Like, do I love happy endings? Of course I do. I'm glad that
Like
they get the
I
rescue.
kind of agree with that point because like again, there's a couple scenarios that could have worked out if people died. Like for example, Echo, right? MVP of the episode, right? We both loved him, but I saw a couple good points on TikTok where it's like if he would have done what he did and then he died, it would have been poetic, right? Because hear me out, right? It would have been like the last domino has fallen.
Yeah,
Okay, like boom. How poetic is that, right? Domino Squad, last member of Domino Squad, the last domino falling. I mean, his story would have came full circle. I mean, so he would have had a beautiful send off, no loose ends, boom, right there, right? Obviously, we saw Wrecker holding on by a thread the whole entire episode. If he would have done all Plan 99 and would have survived and like taken on that whole like evil version of themselves like by himself or like basically sacrificed himself, again, beautiful, poetic ending. So they had the opportunity, but they were just like, nah. But then, like, if you're not going to kill them, like, at least put it in the budget to show an older version of like Wrecker and Crosshair. Like,
That's
I
what I would
understand
have
why you
wished.
didn't
You
do
did
it because
Hunter,
obviously it's like a father.
but and
Yeah, it's like a. I understand it's like a father daughter moment, but like again,
they're all the
they're
father,
alive. So like just
especially
have one
Wrecker.
final.
You can't
Exactly,
tell
they're
me
all
she
fathers.
don't. And what annoys me about that is I feel like after spending time with Omega, why would she leave in the middle of the night and not say goodbye to her other brothers that arguably are definitely, as I'm assuming, Hunter's a little more important, and I get why. It's a nice moment together. But realistically, you could have showed like a day before and just been like, don't tell Hunter. Because I would have liked to see Wrecker old. I would have liked to see Crosshair old. And it just would have been nice because, again, you would have fully gotten closure with them. Obviously, we know they're still around because of the names and stuff. So we know that they're not dead and nothing happened to them and stuff. But again, it's like, little things like that. Like if you do it, add these little things and it definitely will make a difference and stuff. But again, that ending was an opening more than an ending, in my opinion. And it really was a different finale from what I thought. I mean, even though it had, you know, heartbreak and a lot of moments that edgy you see, it was a great episode. And I saw somebody say this and I kind of agree with it. Somebody said it was a great episode, like, of TV, but it was an okay Star Wars uh, episode, which I also kind of agree with as well. Because again, if you would have basically what everybody is saying, show Rex, Cody, Wolf, that it doesn't even have to be the main thing. Show that would have made a lot more people happy. If you just would have really touched upon like you could have probably had two more episodes before this. You probably could have thrown something else with Asajj in there. Even if it was like half an episode with her and half of Wolf. I don't fucking know. But since you brought that back and didn't close it out, it really did make a big difference in the ending of your show. Season 7 of the Clone Wars, you ended everything there. We knew what was happening afterwards. We knew we were getting the Bad Batch. That was no problem. But this, you end it in a beautiful way, but you also leave it pretty wide open for more. It's a good thing, but we don't know what your plan is. We know the Mandalorian movie and we know the other two movies. Honestly, I don't give a shit about the other two movies. Get rid of that and continue with this. I mean, seriously, if you want to bring Omega back, put her in a live action movie or some shit with the rest of the rebellion. Call it Omega Squad. I don't care. But like, do this. This is what Star Wars fans like. And I know you say yes, they need to not hold on. You can hold on to this. You can. It's not, if it's Dave Filoni. If you plan it right, this is your moneymaker. I'm sorry, but realistically, the Ray movie and the other, I mean, all the movies I'm interested in. I'm hyped for the Dave Filoni the one most, but the other two movies, again, eh. This, yes. One more show with the clones. Something else with Omega. That's two more things right there. I mean, you have the opportunity. Whether or not they use it, I really don't think they will, because I don't. And if they do, they're probably not going to do it for another couple of years, which would be stupid of them, unless you make an announcement. Unless you make an announcement next month or 2 months or in the summer or whatever, or May 4th, and say, Rex and Echo will return or some shit like that. But again, this is probably your most, if you had to ask the general Star Wars fan base that is not 60, 50, or 40, that is probably 30 and below, what are your favorite parts of Star Wars? What's your favorite projects? They would probably say Revenge of the Sith and the clones. Now, I'm not some freaking clone boy, even though I literally got Wrecker tattooed on me and a clone tattooed on me. I'm not like one of those annoying clone boys, because I love all Star Wars projects and I like that they do so many different things and they're open to that. But also, when you have something that works, don't ruin it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and don't waste it. You have some of the most interesting characters in the Star Wars universe that are called clones. They're literally just clones. And this show, Clone Wars, gave them all so much personality. You did a spin-off of Clone Wars from 99. Who would have thought that you literally would have created a whole nother story just from 99? Who would have thought you would have brought back Echo and made him such an important character again? I mean, who would have thought you would actually see a female clone? I never thought of that. I thought all the clones were guys, and you not only saw one, but you saw another one. She could be out there somewhere doing I don't even know what. So again, sorry for the rant. Again, I know both of us have ranted in this episode. Again, it's not, even though it's stuff that may be viewed as negative, neither of us hate this episode, and neither of us hate this show. Personally, this is one of my favorite Star Wars projects that has come out. Like, I love it, and I wish we had more of it. And what?
This show is probably like, if I'm being honest, it's probably like a B minus.
Okay, well,
Like
regardless of what my brother says, I really like this show probably more than other people. Why? Maybe I'll do an episode on my own, really talking about it, getting more in depth about it, or something. If that's something you guys want to hear, let me know, and I definitely will. Or maybe I'll just do it for fun. Um, but otherwise, I've definitely seen that a lot of people enjoy this show too. And again, it helps you cling on to the Clone Wars. People don't want that to go. So if you take
but
anything
the
away
problem
from,
is that the problem is that like I understand like leaving these plot holes open and wanting them answered because these are some really interesting characters, but Star Wars is more than just the Clone Wars. Like I understand, like it's very popular and people love it, and that unfortunately in today's day and age, that is most of the fan base. But we've had the prequel and Clone Wars for like over 20 years now. It's like how much more can you squeeze out of the Clone Wars until like you've had your fill? Like I
but
mean, obviously,
realistically,
am I like jumping? Am I like jumping for joy with like all these other projects? Like I'm the same with these other two movies. Like the Dave Filoni movie,
but
obviously
that's
top
what
of the
I'm
list.
saying.
These other two movies,
Like,
like,
I
but it's
know, I
it's like
know
what
you're not excited for
but
Acolyte. You're
they
not
need
excited for
to.
the Ray. You're not excited for the High Republic. I mean, I think you kind of are. So realistically, the only thing that anybody's excited for is the Dave Filoni movie, and why? Because it has Ahsoka, and it has the Mandalorian, and it has
I
all those
think the reason
characters
why
that we still cling towards.
people aren't as excited for these new projects because one, obviously there could be some controversy around them, which obviously is understandable. But two, because they're new and people are afraid of new ideas and new stuff, so they want to cling on to what they're familiar with. So obviously, a lot of people have stuff to say without giving it a chance. Like you said, these shows might come out in June, right? I mean, Tales of the Empire, I think is going to be amazing. Okay, Acolyte might come out, it might be amazing, right? Like, and it might be like a whole new avenue for Star Wars to go into. Or you know what? It might be garbage, and all the hype is for nothing, and then that's a totally different story. But it's like there's a whole check and balances system here, where it's like, I love the Clone Wars as much as anybody. I love the prequel trilogy. It's what we grew up on. It's what made us Star Wars fans. But it's like I would like to see some of this other stuff as well. I know it's been a while. Obviously, Star Wars started with the original trilogy. Let's bring some more of that back in. What can we do in this Clone Wars animation style besides Rebels that could speak to the original trilogy? Obviously the sequel trilogy has its problems. What can we do to improve upon that and make it a little bit better? I mean, obviously we're going into like High Republic territory. Who knows if we'll go even further into the future after the sequel trilogy. But like, that's why they need to wrap up these plot points because you need to have some sort of closure and some sort of endpoint so you can finally put one thing to rest. You have a whole plethora of options to choose from if you want to go back and watch this certain content, and then you focus on new stuff. But unfortunately, because Disney has incompetent people running Star Wars, that's not the case. That's why they keep going back to the same bread and butter because any of the new stuff they put out is crap. So it's like they know that people are going to eat up Clone Wars content and prequels content, so they're going to keep feeding us that. But again, people run their mouths and put certain agendas into the Acolyte, and it's like nobody's excited for that. So it's like, first of all, I think the real problem with Star Wars is that they just got to get their shit together over at Disney. They got to kick like Kathleen Kennedy out, put George Lucas back in charge with Dave Filoni, and then make some real money making projects right here. So it's like I agree with you in the extent that, like, if they want to bring some of these characters back to kind of reminisce about the Clone Wars era and the prequels, like that would be cool to see. Like, would I mind seeing Omega in the future project? No, I wouldn't, especially if it was tied to like the original trilogy, like a whole new animated show, centered around Omega. So we have a little bit of the Clone Wars, we have a little bit of the original trilogy. That would be great. If they did some like a Tales of the Jedi or Tales of the Empire type like micro series with maybe Captain Rex and the clones and show like what they were doing behind the scenes, of course that would be cool. I would watch that day one. But at the same time, it's like once these stories wrap up, to your point, once they wrap up, okay, that's it. Like no more Clone Wars stuff because we've had our fill. It's time to branch out, think of new ideas. There's a ton of extended or expanded universe ideas that they could always bring into Disney's canon, right? There's the whole Thrawn trilogies that I've been reading, that I've been ranting and raving to you about, that they could bring in. That would be a hell of a Star Wars project. So it's time for some new and fresh ideas. And so I'm with you there. I'm with you on some points, but then I think it's also time for a change.
You know what the funny thing is, though? And again, not all Star Wars fans are like this. Every new project that Star Wars has put out that hasn't been related to the Skywalker saga or has tried to go in a different direction in the Star Wars universe, nobody has liked. Even if it was a simple episode that from The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi show or this show or whatever. Nobody had, besides Rogue One, I can't think of any other project that any Star Wars fan has actually liked, and they just say that they want to cling on to it. And what are they doing with their new projects? They're trying to continue with the sequels and open a new thing. And people are like, I don't want to see that with Rey. But you want new content. That's what you're getting, whether you like it or not. But people don't want to see that or want to give it a chance. Same with the High Republic. It's not technically going in the future, but it's going back and showing a totally different thing. But again, a lot of people aren't an acolyte. Everybody pretty much says, it's the least exciting thing. What's the Skeleton Crew? Everybody's like, I don't want to see that. Doesn't interest me. The other Star Wars animation, Visions. People like some episodes, but people are like, there's no point in them continuing in that. Even like the little story points, and I know Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi wasn't everybody's favorites, but even like the other little characters or story points that they're like, I don't want to see that. I just want to see this. Unfortunately, I don't like Star Wars fans, even though I am one. It's just nobody is
No, I
open
agree.
to
I
new
mean,
pro. I
we've
agree.
done whole episodes before.
I don't think that they should cling on to it. It's very similar in every sort of media thing. Indiana Jones. I didn't see the new one. I love Harrison Ford and I love the Indiana Jones movies. You should have let it die years ago. Same thing with what's it called? The recent, even though that hasn't been one in a couple years, recent Terminators. You should have let it die a while ago. Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. You tried to go in a certain direction. You should have let it die a while ago. One of the Fast and Furious. You should have let it die a while ago. DC movies or Marvel movies, you should have stopped at a certain point and went in a different direction. But what does everybody want to see? Iron Man again. No, go in a different direction. Nobody is comfortable with moving on. Everybody wants to stay. I love the Clone Wars and I would watch any projects associated with it. But I want new Star Wars content. I grew up on the Clone Wars. Future kids, they don't need to grow up on the Clone Wars. Grow up on a different Star Wars project. There's only so many, like, for example, if we just go into something as simple as Lego sets or toys, there's only so many freaking TIE fighters or clones or the same set that you can make again. Think about your merch, too. There's only so many things. Again, the regular Star Wars movies from, the 70s, the originals, that's a different story. Those are timeless. Same with the first Jurassic Park and the first Jaws and the first Terminator and the first Rocky and the first Rambo. Those are things that are timeless. And again, Star Wars is timeless. But also, if you're doing a story that you said, then this is the thing. You said this was the end of the Clone Wars era. This show, again, everybody was saying 2008 the Clone Wars started, 2024 it's done because it died with this show. It ended with this show. Don't leave it open-ended because if you have plans, I'm happy about that, but I'm also annoyed because you said it was ending. 20 years, 20-something years is a long time for a show. It's a long time, even though you took a break. It's time to move on. Again, me and my brother both grew up with it. He's going to be in his mid 20s. I'm getting close to my mid 20s. I want more Star Wars projects. Again, the sequels. You tried to move on, yet you couldn't let Leia die or Luke die or really any of the. I get why. I understand. But you brought back. You created new characters and a new storyline, yet you always had to go back. Again, who was your villain? Palpatine in the ninth one. Why? You had Kylo Ren. Like, why? If you didn't do that, this show could have been completely different too. But again, this isn't
I
about
mean,
ranting. You
you
probably
could argue that they didn't even like expand. Like they just basically copy and pasted the original trilogy, put new characters, new factions on it, and made it their own.
you
And
know
then they
why?
brought back the original
Because in their
characters.
mind
But
it
what did they
worked,
do?
and it did.
They brought back
It made the
they brought
money,
back the original.
and it
They
got.
brought back the original.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is, but that's how companies work and everything like that. But again, guys, rant aside, neither of us are hating on this show or the final, or I don't think we're either really hating on Star Wars in general. I think we're just two passionate fans that are logical about things and don't just hate on it. We're not hating on it. I'm being realistic and saying that I love this. That Star Wars is one of the most important areas and one of my favorite areas in my life. But again, as a fan that is gonna watch pretty much any Star Wars project that comes out, you need to adapt. You need to change. You need to move on. As much as it sucks, it's like anything in life. You may miss something. Oh well, you got to move on. You could have had a shirt that you loved. I had a shirt that I loved and I got bigger. I can't wear it. Got to move on. I had Lego sets that, whatever, I got rid of. I can't afford them now. I got to move on. Again, I loved my job and hated it at the same time, but I loved a lot of things on it. But guess what? I had to move on. It's again, companies need to do the same. Disney, you're so big. You could hire anybody to create a show for you. So have your creative room that you have Filoni and Jon Favreau, two of the best people in this business for Star Wars and Disney in general. Create a new story instead of a cash grab, please. It's like the Mufasa movie. I enjoyed the trailer, and that looks interesting to me. But again, why? Kind of like with this. Why? Just if you're doing something, okay, let us know. If you're not, stop it. Just stop it. But overall, guys, pretty much we both said what we wanted to say. Enough of the ranting because I don't want this whole episode to be ranting from us. I think we can both agree that either way, however we felt about the final of this show, it was a good Star Wars show. Again, some people liked it more than others, which is fine. But overall, it was a good addition to Star Wars. I'm glad that it, was I can't even say if it was the end of Clone Wars. But either way, I'm glad for the show. And it was a great run. I mean, what? It was 2021 to 2024. So this show started in COVID. And I remember when it first came out. So, it was nice to get through the couple of years with this show pretty much through college, at least for me fully. And I know part of you. So and I know a couple other people may have grew up with season 7 of the Clone Wars and this. So again, it was an awesome time. It's a shame to see it go, but both of us are looking forward to the future of Star Wars, and we hope they do right by it. But the next Star Wars animation project we got is Tales of the Empire, which is really cool, and we're both excited to see that. So definitely let us know what you think of that. But otherwise, I'll let my brother talk a little bit, and then we'll close out the episode because I'm tired, man. There's a lot of talk. A
Yeah,
lot of talk.
we had a lot to say, a lot of fire and passion, and I mean I agree. I mean, look, I mean we're not bashing the Bad Batch or Star Wars. We're just um, just two really passionate fans, just
Yeah.
like concerned about where one of our favorite franchises is going, and what we think they should do. But I mean, we're just measly fans. Obviously, the big executives are going to make the decisions. But overall, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it was a good show. Like I said, I think I would put it in that B tier. If I really had to analyze it, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, the finale, does take off a lot of points for me. I'm sure in the future, we'll probably do some sort of, maybe show ranking or something.
That would
Now,
actually be a good episode.
because I think it would be cool if we did a little bit of a tier list. Maybe we'll wait until Tales of the Empire comes out. Maybe we'll do one on like all the animated shows or whatever. Um, But yeah, but let us know what you guys thought, down below in the comments, and on all of our platforms, what you thought of finale, maybe some points that we didn't consider, that we didn't think. I saw some really heartbreaking TikToks of different theories that fans have made. Like, some people are speculating that technically they never unmasked like the evil versions of Clone Force 99. So people are thinking, like, what if they actually did bring back Tech and they just never unmasked them, so they just killed him
Let
twice?
him die.
That would be
I'm
really
sorry.
fucked
Just
up
let
if
him
that was
rest.
what if they brought back Cody and they made him evil and they killed him without even
Oh
knowing.
God.
But, I mean, those are just sad fan theories that people just like to make to break people's hearts. I don't think they would go in that direction, especially with beloved characters like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's May, it's Star Wars month, so I would love to do an episode like on the Bad Batch as a whole, just kind of going over the whole show as a whole. Obviously, we have the anniversary of the Phantom Menace this year. So I would love to do an episode just going over the Phantom Menace. Finally starting our Star Wars movie review. I'm sure there's other Star Wars topics that we can cover this month. As a tribute to Star Wars. And yeah, so let us know down below if you want to see anything specific when it comes to Star Wars, or if not, just what's your favorite thing about Star Wars? What are you guys fans of? Are you like us? Are you a little bit different? I know my boss is a little bit older than me, so he's more like original trilogy, like expanded universe, which is really cool because I get a new perspective. And I've even reached into some of the books. Like, I tell my brother all the time, I've been reading the Thrawn books in those trilogies, and those are absolutely fantastic. It's like a whole new world in the same galaxy, like, or in the same universe, which is absolutely fantastic. I love it. So there's a whole world of Star Wars out there that people could explore. I mean, I'm like I said, me and my brother grew up on the prequels. We grew up on the Clone Wars, but I've branched out and I've tried new things and I've really enjoyed it. So don't be afraid to dive into. I mean, I feel like I just scratched the surface with Star Wars. I mean, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
expanded
It really
universe
is.
stuff out there that's not considered canon anymore. That is really good storytelling. That involves some of the characters that we all know and love, just in a different storytelling. So, I mean, don't be afraid to try new stuff. I mean, even if the books, are a couple of years old, or, a couple of decades old, like, don't be afraid to try some new things with Star Wars. If you love it, you love it. If you don't, you don't. But
Give it
yeah,
a
just
try.
let us know down below what you guys think. While I'm speaking, I might as well, list out our socials. So we didn't do it in the beginning of the episode, but if you guys are curious where you can find more beloved Two Sons podcast content like this, and more Star Wars content like this, you can find us on Two Sons Podcast. Obviously, that's been O, not a U, because we are two brothers. We are on Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, obviously YouTube, all under Two Sons Podcast. Again, that's with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. Now, we switched our upload schedule, so we usually are releasing our episodes on Monday. However, because May the 4th is this Saturday, we are going to be uploading this episode on May the 4th. So if you are joining us on May the 4th and you're watching this, May the 4th be with you. Hopefully you guys are having a good Star Wars day. But this will be our little treat for you guys from Two Sons Podcast. I'm sure maybe we'll post stuff about May the 4th on May the 4th. But, this will be our treat to you guys to watch some Star Wars content on Star Wars Day. So hopefully you guys have some special plan, whether it's like binge watching the movies or TV shows or just enjoying everyday life. Hopefully you have a good Star Wars day and you know, just enjoy life. Just be thankful for what you like and who you are, and just enjoy what you love, because that's the most important thing in life. Just enjoying what you love, because nobody else is going to do it but you. So make sure you enjoy your life and enjoy what you love. Again, thank you guys for coming out. We started our YouTube channel by going over the Bad Batch, and we are continuing our YouTube channel and our podcast with the ending of the Bad Batch. So thank you guys for all the love and support. It's really meant a lot. It's always sad to see a piece of our childhood finish up and then be like, psych, it's actually continuing. So hopefully they figure out what they're doing with this. But yeah, thank you guys for all the love and support as always. You guys seem to really enjoy our little breakdown series of the different shows. So go back and look at our other ones. We did ones on Ahsoka. We did ones on other Star Wars projects. So go check them out. Let us know what you think. And yeah, because this is a Star Wars episode, before I give it off to my brother, again, have a happy May the 4th. Hopefully you enjoy this weekend. Let us know if you went to go buy any of the new Lego sets, what you did on May the 4th, what your favorite thing about Star Wars is, because we love Star Wars over here, if you couldn't tell, obviously, by our surroundings and whatnot. But yeah, again, thank you guys for coming out. And, because this is a Star Wars episode, I will leave you all with a May the 4th, and May the Force be with you all. And now, Joey, Go ahead.
All right, just like my brother said, thank you for coming out to our final episode of season 3 of the Bad Batch, closing out our mini series and closing out our start of this Bad Batch journey, and now the end. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future, in future episodes. Maybe I will. Maybe we'll do show ranking. You'll just have to come back and see. Again, we're on our way to our 100th episode, so definitely probably by the summer we're going to hit that. It's been an amazing journey so far. Can't wait to continue it with all you guys. Once again, you know where to find us. My brother has covered that already. Once again, this will be releasing on Saturday, May the 4th. So, of course, May the 4th and May the 4th be with you guys. Hope you have a great Star Wars Day if you're celebrating it. Let us know what you did. Let us know what you enjoy about Star Wars. Let us know what you thought of this show. That'll probably be the question on this podcast. Overall, be safe, be healthy, be happy, be smart, be wise, be a Jedi, be a Sith, be a Gungan, be whatever you want, because there's only one you, and you only got one chance. So, with that being said, once again, may the Force be with you guys. Have a great night.